Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your Faye Blessing and we are back at it again with another video. So today's video is going to be about my Columbia College interview. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So guys, like I said, this video is going to be about my Columbia interview. And before I even get into the story time, I just want to say when I was doing research on Columbia interviews, there were literally nothing on YouTube. Like, I don't think Columbia gives a lot of interviews mainstream. I don't know, but I cannot find any information on anybody's story times or just their story about how their Columbia interview really went, and I'm quite surprised about that. And even after doing research on like Reddit, I still don't even know like what's the vibes as far as Columbia interviews go. So yeah, let's get into the interview. So let me first start by saying the turnaround for the Columbia interview was like really quick. He emailed me one day and then the interview was the next day, and I actually was not aware that I was gonna have a Columbia interview at all. I actually thought I was done with most of my college interviews as far as IBs go. So I'm really happy that I had a Columbia interview, and I honestly have to say I think by far my best interview yet was the Columbia interview, and it was actually like one of the shorter ones. Even before I continue with the story, Reddit. If you don't have Reddit, if you've like heard all the stories, especially like with everything that just happened like a couple weeks ago with the stock market, I highly recommend getting a Reddit account. They have everything on there. Like if you're somebody who's super into college stuff, looking into like when likely letters come out, anything that has to do with college, I highly recommend downloading Reddit, because this is how I found most of the questions. I really do a lot of prep for this one because I've already had a lot, and it was just like, we're gonna do it. So the day of the interview, like I said, I actually did not have any class, so I was really relaxing the whole day. And when it was time for the interview, that was actually the first time I opened up my computer for the day, really. So when I opened up the computer and I logged in, I got in about 5 minutes early, and he actually got in about 5 minutes early as well. So we actually started my interview about 3 minutes earlier than when it was supposed to be, which is fine. So again, my interviewer, I didn't look him up because I really didn't have enough time and I couldn't really find him. So I actually ended up not knowing any prior knowledge about my interviewer. But what I did find out through the interview was that he was from the same state as me, and he actually knew again what school I went to, which I'm like, wow, okay. So yeah, the interview was really nice. It was really short. I think it was about 30 to 40 minutes. And it was just, the questions that were asked were just, what is a book that had a lasting impact on me? Similarities between my friend group. Who am I, of course. Why Columbia? And there's one more that I'm missing, but that was like the scope of the entire interview. And honestly, it was really conversational. It was so conversational that it did go longer than what most Columbia interviews are said to be. I heard that most are supposed to be like 10-30 minutes, and ours was closer to an hour. But it was still on the shorter side because I've had interviews more than an hour, so it was on the shorter side to what I'm used to. But I know in comparison to people's interviews, it was a little bit more on the longer side for a Columbia interview. And again, it was very conversational. He asked his questions at the front and I just answered them through, and then we started just going back and forth based off of my answers. So it actually was like all my questions were actually answered in the beginning. So he kind of was just like, I'm gonna ask you all your questions now, and whatever I like find key points that he writes in his review, he wants to expand on those. So that was how my interviewer specifically did it. And he just asked the first 5 or 6 questions, and I answered them. I gave him like about 5 minutes, like 2-3 minute explanations on each one, and I got really personal. And through all of my interviews thus far, I've kept like the same storylines because I really wanted to ensure that I stay true to myself and what it is that I want to be and what I want to do in my life. So by far my answers for the most part were the same as far as like the scope and the focus, but again, it was very like calm. He did comment throughout the first like answering the 5 questions, but we definitely didn't get more in detail and more in depth and more into the conversation until after he asked me my questions at the beginning. So after he asked me those questions, like I said in the beginning, then he went ahead and he went back over the questions, but then he went ahead and asked questions like about what I had said. So like when I said about my family, he wanted to know more about where my family's from, how that has impacted me, how I like being an older sister. And then he actually told me about his life growing up with his siblings. And then he also told me like how his father worked at Columbia. So we kind of went back and forth, and with his was definitely more storytelling in his life as well. So we definitely went back and forth sharing our stories, and we were really relatable. That's one thing I can say about my Columbia interview that it was really relatable. I think that Columbia thus far, because it's only me, so me by example, did a good job with pairing me with somebody who I could connect with, even though he wasn't the same skin tone as me and he was very much so older than me. When I say older, like gray hairs type vibes, like he was not just like 20, 30. He was definitely a little bit mature. So but he was still relatable in the sense that he came from my area, at least, or he knows my area now, because I think he did grow up in New York. Yeah, he did grow up in New York, but it was still relatable. I could still explain to him stuff about my personal life as far as like my school and like some of my geographic areas, and he could understand what I was saying and kind of have feedback on that. So I do think for the most part that Columbia does do a good job with giving relatable people. I do know from talking to him that Columbia interviewers, they don't have to be in the same area as you because it is online. But one thing I can say about all my interviewers have been from my state, and some of them have been like 5 minutes local to me. So like they've done so far, at least for me, I've lucked out in having interviewers that are very familiar with my area and who I could possibly be as a student at my local high school. It's really a chill interview. He really told me a lot about the school, and one thing that I asked him was like, how do other interviewers go? And he said for the most part they do stick with the questions, but they also want to make sure that they're presenting Columbia to the best of their ability, and I think he really did that. He went really in depth about some stuff, especially when I asked questions about Columbia. He definitely did really well in going in depth about Columbia as a whole and really telling me about his experience and just the stuff that, even stuff that he didn't know like fully, because he hasn't been there since like the 90s or whatever. He really knew how to still like relate some of that stuff to what I was talking about and still like kind of give me tips and tricks. One thing I would say about my Columbia interviewer, he stressed connections. Like he stressed the fact that in life you need connections, and he kind of like gave me a lot of like background story on what not having connections to the extent that you would think somebody at Columbia has done for him. This Columbia interview was by far one of the nicest and best ones, just because we really slowed down. And I like that he got all the questions out the way and kind of was listening to my answers, but then now he could explain and add on. And I think that also helped because sometimes you don't get to all the questions because you're explaining. So it actually helped me to stay more on focus and not talk too much, that I would feel like I was talking too much. And I really do like that he did his questions in the beginning and then talked about them after the fact. But really, that was really my Columbia interview. So I would say that they do have a standard like cut and paste on at least the questions that they ask, but depending on your interviewer, you will have some questions that are not what you like are used to as far as like more imaginative. But I mean, I think that makes the interview more fun because you get to think about something that's not just the stereotypical weaks and strengths. So that's really what I have to say about the Columbia interview. And Columbia's interviews, I haven't really heard that much tea about them. So if you have any information about if getting a Columbia interview is more in a step of a right direction or a bad, let me know, because I was so shocked I couldn't find that much stuff about Columbia interviews, and it really wasn't that bad. I was so nervous that maybe it was like overwhelming, that people just didn't want to talk about it. But honestly, at least for me, my interview was by far so chill. Like I said, it was my best interview. He was so nice, and all we did was talk. Like my questions part was about 5-10 minutes, and then for like the remaining 30-40 minutes we literally just talked. I really think that if you're going into your Columbia interview, do not stress it at all, because they're so nice. Like the guy from Columbia, he was a nice guy. And I'll also say make sure to keep in contact with your interviewer, because he did tell me to reach out once I got into Columbia. Oh, and he did say he want to see me in New York, so I don't know what's the tea, but your sis might be there. If I'm there, then you already know the vibes. But yeah, so my Columbia interview was honestly, like most of my interviews, I think it was most relatable to my UPenn interview. So if you like want to get more information on like what a field could be, also check out my UPenn interview, because for the most part it really was the same. I would really say no stress if you're going into your Columbia interview. I think Columbia is a wonderful school. Like it's an Ivy, and it's just like, I love Columbia. I've always loved that school. I love the financial district. So definitely do not hold out on Columbia interviews. I know it might be overwhelming, especially since you can't find that much information on YouTube, and I really hope this video helps you prepare or even like calm your nerves about your Columbia interview. And if you have any questions about a Columbia interview specifically that I didn't touch on, please comment that below, because this really was an overview. Class of 2025, I really wish you guys good luck. If you're applying to Columbia, I hope you get in. Thank you guys for watching this video. Again, if you guys have any questions specifically about a Columbia interview, please comment below. I thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, share with your aunties, your uncles, your nieces, your nephews, your classmates. Put me on the Zoom, like do all of that. And just thank you so much for watching this video. Bye.